everybody, Thunder Ridge Homestead here. The first thing I want to tell you is I did my videos about my homestead journey, and I did the part 1 video about starting to keep some of my records, and I was editing my videos and you all convicted me. My giant shelf mess was driving me crazy, and so I have actually, look, I've cleaned! I cleaned! Hooray me! Look, I'm getting organized. This has been taking me like about a week, but it's getting done. It needs done. There's still more to do, but it's getting done. So, yay! I guess there's some value to YouTube videos after all, if nothing else to get me organized. Okay, so we're going to start talking some more about our record keeping. We talked about on the first one about keeping my feed envelope, and I'll give you a little bit of a quick review for that. If you guys have not seen that before, this is my feed envelope, and it's how I keep track of my feed that we feed on this farm over the year time, and keep track of the prices and the amount of money I spend my outgo on feed. It's a very simple solution to a problem, but you know, it works. The next thing that I'm going to talk to you guys tonight, or today I should say, about is, and ta-da, here's another corner of my room. Hope you all can see this. And what this is a calendar. And there's the calendar, and there's my computer, so you guys can kind of see where it's at, so I can sit and look at my calendar. Calendars are another invaluable way to keep notes and records for the homestead. Just marking things down, like, you know, when the chicken sits on the eggs, and you can count the days and mark when the eggs are due, and put a big circle around the day and draw a picture of an Easter chick or whatever, and it gives you an idea of what's going on when. Calendars are invaluable for homestead records. The one I have right by my desk there is very important. I write a lot of things on it. Just quick notes, sometimes when shots are due, you know, we do doctor's appointments and stuff for the family. I mean, just a good calendar is a very good record-keeping thing, and it's very simple. The things that work in the long run are the things that are the easiest to use, and that's something very important, you know, when you're trying to set up this whole record-keeping thing and to know what's going on in your homestead. And like I said, homesteading head first. You know, keeping track of a date, then that way you know when something's going to happen, and you plan ahead. Another type of calendar, and this is actually one that I made. We got the calendar given to us from the bank or something, and then, you know, it was last year's calendar, and you see it even says 2019 right there on it. But what I did was I made a new calendar sheet for 2020. And the reason I like this calendar is because it has a pocket. See that little pocket? And this calendar is my egg count calendar. And it hangs right by my refrigerator. And that was January. This is February's dates here. And in the little pocket, I have a pencil. Okay? And every night, we gather eggs. I come in. I put the eggs, clean them, put them in the box, and I write the amount on the calendar. Trying to get this so you guys can see it. Hopefully you can. There you go. Okay, that's a little bit better. Alright, so what we do, it's simple, 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 simple. I've been writing the number of eggs. I got a turkey egg on this day, which is kind of odd for the middle of winter, but I got one. So I'm writing it down. When we got done, like this day, 7 eggs, 4, 8, 9. You can kind of track. If you want to, you can also take the time and put a little note like, you know, snowed, or 10 degrees, or rained all day, cloudy. Little things like that, just little one word will help you to keep track and to know what's going on as far as like your egg production. As we go through and I write all these numbers down, then you'll see on the edge here, hope you can see, get where you can see it again. Focus, focus, focus. I've written like the first week we got 20, the second week we got 53 eggs, then we got 61 eggs, and we got 54 eggs, and basically I keep a week total just written along the side. Because this is a calendar that I printed the pages of, and it's something, this is an actual used calendar, it's not anything I'm trying to keep beautiful, so I don't mind scrawling all over it. Some of these numbers I've written while it was on the wall. Some of the numbers my grandson wrote when he gathered the eggs. We just keep track of that. And there's a real important reason why you keep track of that. When you have something like chickens, for example, every day you go out and you put food out for them. And you gather eggs. And if you're like most people, you eat the eggs. I mean, it's just as simple as that. You don't get, you know, $5 a dozen, or pay anything $5 a dozen or $4 a dozen or whatever the going rate is. You're not getting the cash in your hand. But the fact of the matter is your family is getting that value of an item. And another very important thing to do is to always, across the board, whenever you're doing any homestead record keeping, you want to make sure that you're valuing your produce, whatever produce it is, correctly. When we first started doing homestead stuff, I had just some, you know, like a regular office sheet, because I told you I went through, you know, the pretty books with the blank papers and the lines, and then I went to graph paper, and then I tried like an actual accounting system with accounting papers and stuff like that. And it was important because whenever we were getting eggs, like a dozen eggs, I was calling it $1. $1 a dozen, you know, $1 a dozen. Just was calling the eggs. Well, the thing is, yeah, you can sometimes, and this is back in the 80s even, you could sometimes find eggs for $1 a dozen on sale, but usually even store eggs were not $1 a dozen. If you look today at just, you know, what they call bog standard, run-of-the-mill, normal eggs that you buy at the grocery store, you know, they're not cheap. You know, you pay a dozen eggs, and, you know, it's a couple dollars or more, you know, quite a bit more sometimes. And it's important that you actually credit your production with the value of those eggs. Now, a standard egg, like, you know, you get at the grocery store typically, the standard, you know, American white eggs, they're grown in a warehouse. So the eggs that are produced commercially in the United States right now are typically chickens raised in a warehouse, and they're caged in what's called a battery cage system. And in that system you have, you know, several hens confined in a small caged area. Usually they have a dropping pit down beneath the cage where all the poo falls. They're in the cage, you know, 24/7. They don't get out. They don't go outside. They have food and water right there. When they lay their eggs, they roll down in front of the cage onto a conveyor or some sort of collection device. The typical space for a hen in a battery cage is the size of a sheet of paper. You know, that's about how much room a chicken has to stand on inside of the battery cage, and that's where they live, you know, for the entire production season. Eggs produced in that way are, you know, they're eggs, but they are lacking a lot of the vitamins and the minerals, and, you know, the sunshine and fresh air aspect actually produces higher quality food. The more healthy an animal is, the better quality its produce is. And doesn't, you know, same thing for chickens, because if a chicken's exercising, they're outside, they're in the sunshine, the fresh air, or even if they have the room of a big warehouse where they're roaming around inside of it, they still get exercise, and so they produce a higher quality product. Typically speaking, people that raise chickens on homesteads do not keep their chickens in a battery cage. I've seen two times, a homesteader that had battery hens. Just isn't very common at all. Typically speaking, they raise chickens in a run or a coop where they have, they have at least space where they can run around. Usually they have access to outdoors. When you're buying eggs at the grocery store, they grade the eggs. They have the typical eggs that you can buy, the cheap eggs. And then they have what they call cage-free eggs. And those are the hens that are roaming free inside of the warehouse. And then they have eggs that are, called free range, which means they get access to the outdoors. They may just have a big warehouse and one little outdoor cage where they can get outside and see the sunshine. And then they have pasture-raised eggs, and those are eggs of the hens that are actually grass-fed on pasture, which is a lot like what we think of as a free-ranging hen. If you price those at the grocery store, the prices are just hugely variant, and it depends on the type of life the chicken has had, how they price those eggs, and it's also the nutritional value of the eggs. So when I was comparing my chicken eggs, which are from hens that have been running around free and, on the grass, and I'm giving them $1 price value point, I'm cheating myself. Because if I bought the same egg, the same quality egg, with the same production type that I'm doing with my chickens, I would be paying significantly more. And you want to always value your produce, whatever produce you make, whether it's eggs or tomatoes or, sheep, if you're making lamb or anything that you grow on the homestead, you want to value it as it truly is. If you're, growing hybrid tomatoes and picking them green and packing them in a box and letting them ripen on the windowsill, fine. Count, you're spraying them every day. Fine, count them like you would just the typical grocery store tomato. But most people in a homestead don't have tomatoes like that. Most people in the homestead, at least let them vine ripen. So, that's something. If not, they may even have organic tomatoes. And organic vine ripened tomatoes are a lot more expensive than the typical, greenhouse grown, picked green tomato that you buy at the store. They taste different too. And the same thing with the chicken eggs. They taste different. They've done studies and things on eggs, and eggs that are grown on the homestead typically have higher values of nutrition in them, higher omega-3s, better cholesterol and all kinds of things like that. So it's important, when you're doing that, to value them. So when I'm counting my chickens and counting my eggs, and I count my little calendar here, and I keep track of how many eggs I do. I count them up, and then when I'm recording them for the year, I figure up how many eggs we raised. And I put them, after I do them on the calendar, they go to the computer. What you're looking at right now is my current, what I call my grass-fed expense journal. And it's a thing I have set up for my computer, and I'm going to talk more about it later. It basically has a whole bunch of information, my grass-fed projects on here. But we're just going to discuss this part. If you notice, I have a section of chickens and eggs. And right down here, this says, I'm hoping you can read this and see this. Hopefully you guys can see this better. I'm hoping. Okay, and this says, right here, 2020 eggs. After I've recorded on my calendar that I showed you guys the egg production for the month. At first, I'm just recording it down in here. That's my first place I record it. And yes, I do some things several times. It makes me happy, okay? Everybody's got to do things the ways that they do them. This says eggs for the table, and I have dozen. This January, which is just month is just over with, we gathered 15 dozen eggs plus 8 eggs. 15 dozen plus 8 eggs for a total of 188 eggs. That's how many eggs my 20-some hens laid this January. And like I said, just gathering them and counting them. And actually, the count is off. And I'll tell you why. Because today I just found a hidden nest in the barn. So I did not count those eggs. But that's just the eggs that we have for January. Okay. I also did a little bit of research, and I looked in my local area, and I've looked at regular grocery stores, and I've looked at health food stores, and I've looked at lots of places, and the cheapest that I've been able to see pasture eggs selling for was $4.49 a dozen. And that was a store called Natural Foods nearby us, and this is the date that price was 1/12/20. If that changes at all, I do change my records. Currently, at $4.49 a dozen, that means that each of my eggs we produced this January, if I would have to buy that egg at the store, would cost me 37 cents. 37 cents per egg. Up here, I recorded January's total. I've got 188 January eggs. And then in the right column, I put $69.56. My chickens for the month of January produced $69.56 worth of eggs. That's pretty impressive. I have another total column here for egg sales. If I sell any eggs, I record that here as a separate, so I know what it is. In the past, I have sold hatching eggs. I have sold pedigreed chicken hatching eggs. I have sold eggs just for other people to eat, you know, like friends and family members will buy them from us, or like I used to sell them at work and they would buy eggs. And I keep track of that amount right there in that column, and it is a separate figure so I can know how much. If I'm selling eggs, I usually write someplace on there how much per dozen. Probably what I would do is I would take this column and I would move it up here, and then I would say down here like hatching egg, and maybe $6 a dozen. And that's not an exorbitant amount, but I may put that down, and then I would know how much I sold those particular eggs for. And you keep track of all of that. I've sold a lot of different weird ways of selling eggs. I even at one point sold egg shells that were blown for people to do crafts. So there's a lot of things that you can do as far as selling eggs. And I try to keep track of all the different ways. If you can see down here, this is kind of like my total for this chicken egg layer production. Let's look at this whole thing a minute. I've got a little area on my spreadsheet for chickens, and this is egg chickens. And at the beginning of the year, I had 23 hens and 3 roosters. and I have the chickens, what I have, and I also note on here what year they were born. And I do that because that way I know, okay, like the reason these two buff Cornish hens are still around is because they were both really good hatching hens, and I use them to hatch out turkey babies with. So I'm not so much into their whole egg production, you know, as long as they're still setting on babies and hatching eggs for me, I'll keep them around. But like these other hens down here are younger. This is the various kinds I have, and the year that they were hatched, so that I know how old they are and I know how much egg production they're going to be doing. Some of the chickens, this right here, she has a name. My grandson calls her Furball Head. And so she's actually got a little line that tells us that. Then if you look down here next, I have the beginning of the year this year. I've had 3 roosters. What kind of roosters they are, when they were hatched, and I also have a guard goose. And I count all of those in my laying hens folder. Basically, these are the laying chickens, and this is the year in beginning of the year. I also have a value assigned to each of these chickens. I only value in my roosters at about $1 because you really can't get nothing for a rooster. If I would sell him, that's about all they're worth. On the other hand, a brand new 2019 Lavender Americana, I could get $10 for if I put her on Craigslist. So that's her value. I have a value on there. I do not call that as part of my income, but I do have a value for each of the chickens that I have. This little area down below here is where I will record any additions. Let's say I decided I was going to buy, I'm up at Tractor Supply and I see 5 really pretty leghorns. I will put that down. Actually, I'd put it down like this. A second. I'd put 5. I'd put what they are, leghorns. And if I paid for them, I might have paid $2 a piece for them. So I will put down here, since I bought 5 of them, I spent $10. Whoops. I spent $10 on them. And then I have all that recorded, and I might say right over here, notes, bought at Tractor Supply. Okay, and I'll put that all on my little paperwork to keep track of them. And that way I know, you know, how much these chickens are worth. If I bought them as, you know, babies this year, I'm just counting for their value this year. If all these leghorns turned out to be pullets, next year they would show up with a value like these above us do. So anyway, that's kind of how I take care of that as far as keeping basic counts of things, so I know my animal assets. And this is, like I said again, where I count the eggs. I have my stuff all divided up into different projects, and we're going to talk about more of that later. But right now I just wanted you to see how I can use a simple thing like a calendar. I wanted you guys to see how just keeping track of something like writing these eggs down on a calendar, and then, you know, once you have the data collected, which is what this is just a data collection, then you can put it into your record keeping, and it can teach you a lot about your, you know, your homestead, and is it valuable? Is it worth it? I can tell you, like I said, just from this little data sheet that I collected for January's eggs, once I put the information into the computer, what did I notice? $69.56 of valued eggs. That's how much I would have spent on eggs for my family, buying the kind of eggs I produce. I know that the chickens did not eat $69.56 worth of feed in January. You know, our feed value we've already discussed from our other little book here. Our scratch grain is $9.99 for 50 pounds, and our layer pellets are, you know, about 11 something, I think, for 50 pounds. So, you know, even if I bought, you know, 2 bags of each, it's still nowhere near $69.56. So that is, my chickens are actually earning our family money. They're actually producing something of value for us, for our family. The neat thing about it is, when I'm doing my taxes at the end of the year, that's $69.56 that I don't have to claim, because they don't tax you on how many eggs you produce. They don't tax you on what your family eats. If I earn that money at a job, $69.56, you know there's going to be income taxes taken out of it. There's going to be FICA taken out of it. There's going to be Social Security taken out of it. There's going to be, you know, all kinds of little things taken out of that $70 before I even get it. And then, you know, you pay income taxes on it at the end of the year, and then I still have to buy eggs. So in a lot of ways, you know, my chickens have already saved me and earned me quite a bit of money, just taxes, just in 1 month of January. So this is, I'm just going to get longer and longer, and I'm just going to try to keep this short and sweet if possible. But for part 2, calendars. Calendars are very important, and data collection is very important. We'll talk some more about collecting data in our next segment on section 3, and I'm hoping that you guys are going to learn more and more, but I am going to have to show you a little bit more about my computer and how my computer stuff is set up. That will be on the next one, so I hope that you guys join me and, you know, keep learning about how to keep track of this stuff on the homestead. So thanks for watching. If you guys enjoy this, great. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.